Highlight warnings and histograms. What are they all about? Well, they're two very, very useful tools which are definite products of the modern digital age because we didn't have them when we had film. What they do is they help you ensure you've got the exposure correct. Because on bright sunny days like this, it can be very hard to see the LCD. It makes it look dark and fools you into thinking you've got the exposure wrong. Let me show you what I mean. These beautiful white buildings over here are prime candidates to get burnt out highlights. So let me take a shot. A bit in the wrong place. There we go, bit of tree. Nice, though I do say so myself. These little burnt out flashing bits, they're showing me that those areas of the picture are completely burnt away. There is no detail there, it's overexposed, it's just going to be white. If I flick up to the other useful tool, the histogram, these little spikes and jaggedy bits, they make up a graph of the image. It's a visual representation of the bright and dark areas of your picture. Once you've learnt how to read that graph, you'll be able to control your exposure even when you can't see the monitor on the back of the camera properly. But how do you do that? Come with me and I'll show you. It's much easier to look at highlights and histograms on the computer instead of a little teensy-weensy monitor on the back of an LCD. So here's our picture of the house. All the highlight warnings going along the edge of the roof here where we got these bright roof tiles. There was some sparkles going on in the sky. But in nature you get areas that are a little bit bright. It's natural, like the sparkles on the sea. The highlights on the sea on a sunny day are like that. As you can see from the image, it actually looks fine. So you have to make a choice. Your highlight warnings are telling you which areas have burnt right out. If the whole thing was flashing, then you'd have a problem. You'd know it was completely overexposed. You wouldn't be able to see all these textures. You wouldn't see the corners here. If we take a look at this image over here, now this is a really bright, overexposed picture. And this is the sort of thing where all the highlight warnings would be going crazy. They'd be flashing like mad everywhere. So let's take a look at the histogram, which you can see is all bunched up over to the right here. Now, you have to learn how to read a histogram. What does it mean? The right-hand end of a histogram are the highlights. That's the really bright areas of your picture. Around the middle area here, these are the mid-tones of your picture, and the dark is represented over to the left. These are all the dark tones. So if we look at this overexposed image, you can see it's all much too bright. So it's showing everything all bunched up off to the right here. So what happens if we go and take a look at an image which is too dark? What's this histogram going to look like going on what I've just told you? Take a wild stab in the dark. There you go. It's off to the left. This is an example of underexposure. It's the same picture. It was shot on a tripod. Nothing's changed. It's been underexposed on purpose to show you what the histogram looks like. It's showing everything dark off to the left. Well, if you know that a field of barley on a sunny day isn't going to be all dark like that, but your histogram is off to the left, you know your picture is underexposed. So, let's take a look at this one. This is the correctly exposed image. Let's take a look at the histogram for that. And as you can see, it's running from left to right and there's data everywhere. It's kind of the general wisdom is get plenty in the middle of your histogram. Well, there's a good thick layer of data throughout there. There's nothing really exciting going on at either end because there are no really, really bright areas in this picture. If you look at it, there's a little spike here in the bright end, which is probably this white cloud and this brighter bit through the sky. There's another little tiny ramp of darkness, which is probably those trees and perhaps this sort of dark line running through the barley. But there's no bright, exciting stuff going on. This is a very average image of average tones. So what happens if you stray away from average? What happens if you get a bit off-piste with your photography? How do you read the histogram? Well, a little bit of snow for you. What's the histogram of a picture in snow, a correctly exposed shot in snow? What's it going to look like? Come on, put your hand up. Well done, it's off to the right. This histogram is showing that there's lots and lots of information in the bright areas. Well, if it's snowy, then the picture should be bright. If you took this picture and you looked at your histogram in the back of the camera and it was all in the middle, it would mean that the snow was too dark. It would mean it was grey. Snow is bright. It isn't a mid-tone. You can see there's nothing going on in the dark area of the histogram because there's hardly any darkness. There's the most tiny, tiny little line there which you may or may not even be able to see. And that's probably these little bits of darkness and of course the little twiggy thing poking out here. What about a dark image? How's that going to look? You should be getting the hang of this by now. Where's the histogram of a dark image going to be? Just shout it out. Doesn't matter if there's someone else in the room and you feel a bit embarrassed. Just go on, sing it out. Go for it. Yep, well done. You got it. A dark image, correctly exposed, should have its histogram off to the left. Now notice the sky isn't actually black. It's a dark nighttime shot, but we're not talking about a black sky. There's still some detail there, and the sky is actually quite bright as you come over sort of to this area above the headlights by Big Ben. There are some mid-tones here in the Houses of Parliament, and that's represented by this kind of little slope in the graph. If you can see that little tiny spike running right up the edge of the histogram, that's these streaks of bright light, and these two sort of street lights and possibly a bit of the face of Big Ben. Now, there aren't very many really, really bright bits, so it doesn't ramp up. The bright areas of this picture are so minute, they only make up a minute part of the histogram. So, how about a picture which has got both bright and dark tones in it? It's just made of dark and bright. I reckon you're going to get this one straight away. The histogram is going to have a bit of both. I bet that's not quite what you expected. But look, this picture is nearly all white. Almost everything is white. They're not tones of white. They're not different shades of white. It's just white. So look, it's just all up here because this is what it's made of. It's nearly all white. There are hardly any mid-tones at all. Just maybe a little tiny bit around the edges and these shadows underneath here. And then you've got a bit of dark stuff, which are the edges of these filters. But they don't make up much of the overall image, so again, there's not much data there. You would be there forever trying to make a histogram ramp up in the middle of this picture, and you'll never do it because those tones simply are not there. Here's another one to have a check out of. Let's go through it. Lots of white, just like in the one with the filters. Then you've got these very strong pieces of black. But don't be fooled because they don't take up much of the image. There's only a bit of black, there's a tiny bit there. And then you've got Lorna's socks, which are pretty much a mid-tone. But most of the image is white, so our histogram will be predominantly in the bright area. So how about this one? This image here, you've got loads of grey in the sky. You've got some darkish, but still sort of middleish tones in the green of these darker bushes here. Then we've got this bright, bright area, the sun shining brightly on these trees. But think about the tone of those trees. If you were imagining that in black and white, would that be a blinding white area? No, it wouldn't, would it? It's a bright area, but it's a mid-tone. What's the histogram going to look like? It's one of those rare occasions when you have a textbook histogram. It's ramping up in the middle here, because there are masses of mid-tones in this picture. There's hardly any really bright highlighty stuff going on because there isn't much. You've just got the gravel track. Loads of mid-tones, all this grey and the hillside and the grass and even the trees, they're still a mid-tone even though they're lit by the sun. And hardly any dark stuff. A little bit in the sky, bit of shadow on that bush perhaps, and some tree trunks. But overall, that is your classical histogram. And it's one of those rare occasions when you're actually going to get what the books tell you you will. So hopefully you understand histograms a bit now. Go away and use them in the field to get the right exposures.